It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. And we're living in hypothetical world today. Ohio State and Texas play each other next Saturday in the shoe at noon. Get the text 614-350-3315. And the reason why is because if you want all news, all analysis, all anything you could possibly ever want, this is the perfect time to do so. It's a 2-week free trial and it's $3.99. After that, the hypothetical world we are living in is because these are two of the most prominent programs in the history of college football, with a lot of guys over the histories of their long tenured programs who have been elite college football players and gone on to do great things other ways. So we decided to ask the question, who would win an all-time matchup between Ohio State and Texas? And here are the teams. And we're kind of altering the way we're going to talk about this today, because we put the teams together, looked at them, and then realized Ohio State has never been bad at football. And so this is why this might not even be a close conversation. But here are the teams. Here's Texas. What we did was one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, a left tackle, a right tackle, a left guard, a right guard, a center on offense, and on defense, two defensive ends, two defensive tackles, three linebackers, three cornerbacks, and two safeties. And we did that. We went a little further than a starting 22 is because we wanted to give the level of options of, we know schemes have changed over times, base defenses have changed over times. And also it honors enough guys at each position group to feel like you have a full roster versus Ohio State's receivers are awesome, but Texas has two good running backs. So why would we only give them one good running back, right? Ohio State has a lineage of linebackers, but Texas has a lineage of cornerbacks. So does Ohio State too. So here are the teams. Here's Texas's team first. At quarterback, Vince Young. The two running backs are Earl Campbell and Ricky Williams, both of which won Heisman trophies. The wide receivers, Roy Williams, Jordan Shipley, and Limas Swede. Tight end, David Thomas. Left tackle, left to right on the offensive line, Tony Hills, Dan Neal, Gene Chilton, Leonard Davis, and Justin Blaylock. And then on defense, Tony Brackens, Brian Orokpora, Kenneth Sims, and Casey Hampton. That linebacker, Tommy Nobis, Derek Johnson, and Jeff Leading. The cornerbacks, Quentin Jammer, Aaron Ross, and Nathan Vasher. And that safety, Earl Thomas and Michael Huff. And then on the Ohio State side, and you can go look at this on cleveland.com/OSU. We wrote about it a couple times. There's a poll going around right now on who you think would win a game like this. We'll reveal where the results are right now, but it'll be ongoing up until next Saturday. For Ohio State, on offense, quarterback Troy Smith, running backs Archie Griffin and Eddie George. Those are three Heisman winners so far. Wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Carter, and Jeremiah Smith is the first and only active player on this list. At tight end, Ricky Dudley. Well, I do wonder if Max Clare could replace him by the end of this year. But at the same time, if he's only here for 1 year, can you really, if you're a 1 year rental guy, can you make a list like this? Left to right on the offensive line, Orlando Pace, Jim Lachey, LaCharles Bentley, John Hicks, and Corey Stringer. The interesting thing there is Pace and Stringer were tackles here at the same time. On defense, the defensive line, Chase Young and Joey Bosa on the edge, Dan Wilkinson and Cameron Hayward on the interior. At linebacker, Chris Spielman, AJ Hawk, and Randy Gradishire. At cornerback, Sean Springs, Jeff Okuda, and Antoine Winfield. And at safety, Jack Tatum and Mike Doss. We went with those two over Caleb Downs, though you possibly could make a case for Caleb Downs, especially when it comes to Mike Doss, especially now that Caleb Downs is a captain. Because then there's nothing Mike Dawson in his career that Caleb Downs hasn't done in his career. They both won national championships at Ohio State. They both were All-Americans. They're both captains at Ohio State. But we went with Mike Doss, I think, because so far, Mike Doss has a career worth of things here, while Caleb Downs has 1 year at Bama, 1 year at Ohio State. He'll have 2 years at Ohio State by the end of the season. But we went with Mike Doss for the sake of history. So only one active player, and that's Jeremiah Smith. Before we get into who we think has the edge at what position, Stefan, is that right? Jeremiah Smith being the lone active player on this list. Are we reaching, or are we just kind of moving around what the inevitable is here and where his career is going to take off, barring any type of injury?
Yeah, I think we're probably maybe more than reaching. We're probably projecting, because like if Jeremiah Smith left for the NFL today, I think it would be difficult to have him on this list. But I think barring any health concerns, like he is going to be one of the 3 best Ohio State receivers ever. And why revisit this conversation in 2 years and add JJ to the list instead of just doing it now and let's get ahead of it? Because if we're talking sheer talent, like he is on that trajectory. He is going to be one of the best receivers in college football history. And I think the way that he's talked about already in college football, like, I don't know, there's some dudes on this list who there was not a point in their season or in their careers where they were 100% the best player in college football, right? Like Archie Griffin is an exception. You know, Vince Young is an exception. Those are guys that when they were playing, I think you probably had no debate about who the best player in college football is. But like, there's some guys where you can go back and forth, and you know that maybe this guy at Miami was better than him, and this guy at Oklahoma was better, and this guy at Michigan was better. Like you can go in circles about that. Like JJ is undisputed the best, at least offensive player in college football, and he's only going to be a sophomore. So I wouldn't call it a reach. I'd call it maybe more of a projection, but I'm okay with it. I think we can just get ahead of it and like, this is what this dude is going to be. So why beat around the bush?
Andrew, from either team, is there anybody who maybe didn't make the cut who maybe we should have considered?
Arch Manning.
You know, that was really good. You know, I looked at Ohio State and I kind of felt pretty good about it. Like I kind of mapped out the lineup and I was like, man, very genuinely the only person that I was kind of thinking of to harken back to what we did over the summer, I was like, maybe if you want to be a stickler for it, you could probably say like, you know, Michael Jenkins should be on this list because
only you would say that.
Yeah, but like
only you.
I think to answer your Jeremiah point with that though, like that was the one where I was like, you know, he has only played 1 year at Ohio State, and we're leaving Caleb off the list, who also has only played 1 year at Ohio State. And if we're projecting for Jeremiah, wouldn't it make sense to project for Caleb? Like that
I would have been okay with Caleb on the list, but like I'm not going to dispute it too much.
Yeah, and I thought about Jeremiah. I was like, I think we're reaching, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, sure. Like historically, he's not going to stack up against, because like Texas has a dude that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, where it's just like across like the history of college football, you're like, oh yeah, that dude's awesome. But on like a year by year basis, Jeremiah was awesome, like on a 1 year. And then you also look at it and go, man, I have eyes. I watched it. I saw it happen. So I really tried to look for something. Find me a better defensive line than Chase Young, Joey Bosa, Dan Wilkins, and Cam Hayward. I genuinely don't think you can. This is probably the receiving core that I would have went with. I mean, I don't know what else you could have done, especially on the Ohio State side. I felt really good about this.
I think I was just going to say the rosters are stacked 100%. On the Texas side, I wouldn't be surprised if next year, if we were to do this next year, if Anthony Hill is on this list.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was an first team All-American last year, and I think he's going to be a first team All-American this year. And like, I don't like the first guy. I just grabbed one of the 3 linebackers to see which one he could replace. Like Jeff Leading, he was an All-American. He was a consensus All-American, but it was once in 1983. So if Anthony Hill's a 2-time All-American, I think Texas fans might be able to make a case for him.
I was going to say Anthony Hill on defense for Texas, and maybe Colin Simmons if
Simmons is the projection.
The trajectory has to say like Colin Simmons was a very good freshman defensive end. He needs 10 sack seasons back-to-back years over the next 2 years. We joked about Arch Manning, but given the hype there, and this is assuming that Arch Manning, his grandfather, even if it was way too crazy for him to come out here and say it. He's not lying, and Arch is here for 2 years. If Arch wins a national championship at any point in the next 2 years and wins a Heisman Trophy, I think you can start making the case, because then it's like, okay, Vince Young won a national championship and beat a really good team to do so. Okay, Arch would have to beat some really good teams to do so, and he has the hype, and he's a Manning. And if he has a Heisman Trophy, that's his edge over Vince Young, right? But right now, it's a joke, but it's not really a joke with the way that it feels like the world has started to talk about Arch Manning. For Ohio State, I mean, the offensive line is just kind of set for what it is. I think if there is a world that exists where if Jack Sawyer is 15% more productive during his career, maybe, but that's not the world we live in. I think the guy that doesn't make this list, and it's because we only have 3 linebackers, is James Laurinaitis. The problem is James Laurinaitis, out of respect for the history of linebacker, he is currently taking his linebacker room through the history of every All-American linebacker. And the fact that he has enough linebackers to do that multiple times a week leading up to the first game is just, tells you how deep the talent bank is for Ohio State, especially at linebacker. But 3-time All-American, Buckeye Award winner, right? But it just feels like he's the final evolution of what Gradishar and Spielman and AJ Hawk were. So they come before him in this conversation. And then Nick Bosa, I think there's a world where if he doesn't get hurt in 2018 and gets finally to have the money year that he has, maybe you can make the case for him over his brother. Maybe. But those are the only ones where I think 100% you could make the case. Where I think everywhere else it's pretty set in stone here. I think a quarterback is eventually going to replace Troy Smith on these lists. In fact, I think this is where the Connor Stallions thing really shows up here.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is not saying CJ Stroud would have won back-to-back Heismans during his time here at Ohio State. What it is saying is, in 2021, he went into the Michigan game as the Heisman favorite, thanks to what he did to Michigan State's defense. And then they lost that game, and so he finishes, I think, 4th that year in the Heisman Trophy voting. Him losing mixed with Bryce Young 90-yard, 2-minute drill against Auburn, and Bryce Young also playing in a conference championship game the next weekend. Bryce gets the award. 2022. Yeah, 2022, number 2 versus number 3. Both of them are undefeated. That's only the second time it has happened. You know the game of the century they had in 2006? I don't know. CJ Stroud had his own game of the century in 2022. He's not as much of a favorite in terms of the way he was against Michigan after the Michigan State game the previous year, because it just wasn't as loud. But if Ohio State is 13-0, because they would have won the Big Ten championship game, this is still when you're in the East-West division situation. So whoever wins the East is winning the Big Ten. Ohio State gets through that Michigan game. They're 13-0. They are probably the number 1 seed. And I think because Michigan was undefeated, that's what would have given them the edge over Georgia. So they're probably the number 1 seed in 2022. So they're the best team in the country. His stats are awesome, and he's arguably the best quarterback in the country. He wins the Heisman Trophy. So his world
is lost to Utah in the Pac-12 title game, right?
Yeah. So Caleb would have while CJ is lighting stuff up in Indianapolis that night, Caleb is actively losing to Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. So he's Michigan. The whole Connor Stallions thing, for whatever it's worth, that whole situation cost CJ Stroud 2 Heisman trophies, and he has said as much. So if he doesn't lose to Michigan, I think CJ Stroud's on this list instead of Troy Smith.
It's an interesting conversation because, I think you have this happen a lot when we talk about Joe Burrow at LSU, and it's like, hey, if you can make an all-time college football team, who are you taking at quarterback? I mean, I'll take 2019 Joe Burrow over anyone, but okay, Vince Young did it multiple years.
Yeah.
But then it's this thing of I'll take 2006 Troy Smith over anyone, but CJ did it for 2 years, and yeah, he didn't win the Heisman, but it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation because you do have this all-around college football where it's Tim Tebow, his career in totality was elite. I'll take 1 year of Cam Newton. So it's it's an interesting conversation to have, and I think that's what happens in the CJ Stroud Troy Smith thing, where it's Troy Smith, you've talked about it all the time. People shrug it off, but it's that dude won the Heisman voting with no debate. Dominated the first place voting that year. Had an amazing season, but CJ Stroud did it for 2 years. So it's this back and forth. It's difficult. It's really difficult to judge. I could see the case for CJ here, and I think initially when we had kind of put our team together, I think we had CJ, and we ended up deciding to go with Troy. So yeah, I think that's an open debate, but it's again, the Heisman, like specifically at quarterback, the Heisman has some weight.
And
the
it's
Heisman has
also,
some weight, and CJ Stroud is 0-2 in the game. You can't be 0-2 in, unfortunately.
you're mapping, like, it's a fun conversation because you're mapping, like, it's a little bit of what we did with the greatest Buckeye, but like you're mapping out talent versus like accolades. Because like if you were to map out accolades, like I get it, Troy Smith, but how many, like, forget the CJ part of this for like 2 seconds. How many quarterbacks since Troy Smith were better on the field than Troy? Because you could make a case, I think, for Dwayne, Justin, CJ. I think those are, like, Dwayne Haskins threw for 4,800 yards and 50 touchdowns. Like, he was unbelievable, right? And Justin Fields is in that mix too, but the Heisman Trophy. But it's very...
You can't have the quarterback on an all-time Ohio State team be 0-2 against Michigan. It's more, I think it's more that than the Heisman thing. Yeah. You can't have the quarterback of the all-time Ohio State team be the guy who is 0-2 against Michigan. It can't. And that's what's his legacy is, he's the most impacted by what happened at Michigan over the last couple of years here. Regardless, him. Because he is probably the most talented quarterback they've had. When you're talking just arm talent, Justin Fields was super fast and athletic. When we're talking about what he could, how he threw, when I see him throw that ball, that's CJ. That's the best. The running back who used to play for the Vikings and went to Oklahoma. Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he's got this meme where he's talking about Tom Brady, where he's like, "And when I seen him throw that ball," go look it up. It's hilarious. I don't know why he said it like that.
I think it's AP talking about. I think it's Mahomes. I don't know if it's. I think it says Mahomes, but whatever. Yeah,
or whoever he's talking about.
I've never seen that before.
That's what it is. See, that's the best arm talent that Ohio State has had. And he's 0-2 against Michigan, so you can't have him on this list here. So there's that. Those are the teams. Let's take a quick break here, and then we're going to have a quick conversation, just who has the edge at what position group here on Buckeye Talk.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis. We're talking all-time Ohio State versus all-time Texas. Who do we think would win if they were to get on the field together? So let's start at quarterback. Troy Smith versus Vince Young. One's got a Heisman and got to the national championship game. He did lose that game. The context is he also lost his best weapon on a kick return for a touchdown in that game, versus Vince Young, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist, didn't win the award, but at least was a finalist, got to New York, and has a national championship. Who has the edge, Andrew, Texas or Ohio State, at quarterback?
Yeah, I actually think it's Texas.
Okay.
I would take Vince Young over Troy Smith. You know, I understand that, you know, Troy was great, but I mean, if you go back and look, like I was looking up some stats for this earlier and I have them right in front of me. Vince Young, 3,036 passing yards, 26 passing touchdowns, 10 picks. Like, okay, in today's numbers, fairly pedestrian, right? Like, if you have that today, that's nothing crazy. He also rushed for 150. He also rushed 155 times and had 1,050 yards on the ground and 12 rushing touchdowns. Pair that all together, you're over 4,000 total yards with 38 total touchdowns and 10 picks. I mean, especially in 2005, when you know who their starting running back was, and you know who he outrushed? Jamal Charles. Charles, who was awesome at Texas, and Jamal Charles, who obviously was awesome in the NFL as well. You know, I don't want to, poo-poo Ohio State. They had Antonio Pittman and Beanie Wells as their 1-2 punch, and that's a great 1-2 punch. But Jamal Charles was there, and Vince Young was by far and away the best of that kind of conversation. And I think it just goes back to, for me, it was the eye conversation, the eye test. When we watched that 05 Texas Ohio State game, oh my goodness, like Vince Young was unbelievable. And the way that he ran the ball was really unlike many people that have done it in the sport. And I think it's actually Texas.
Stefan, you going Texas over Ohio State?
Yeah, I'm going with Vince Young here. For most of the same reasons Gillis just said.
Same. And one's a first-round draft pick, one's not. And one's an athletic freak, and one is not. And that's not to take away from what Troy Smith. Would you feel the same if it was Troy Smith, if it was Vince Young versus CJ?
Probably.
I think if it was CJ, I'd be more likely to take CJ over Vince Young.
I think so, because the thing with Vince Young is you go look at his stats in 04. Not great.
Not a great thrower. Not a great thrower.
No, he was.
It's a different era, though. Like, it's completely different era.
But he also, his completion percentage was under 60%. He threw for 12 touchdowns and 11 picks. Like, he was almost at like a 1-to-1 touchdown to pick ratio. I don't care if it was 2005, 2025, or 1925. That's bad. Here, let me hearken Woody Hayes. When you throw the ball, 3 things can happen. 2 of them are bad. That was kind of the way that some people thought about it. And that's kind of what happened when Vince Young threw the ball. However, 05 was just ridiculous. The thing with CJ that I think would probably push it over the edge, 85 career touchdowns, 12 career picks. It's a longevity conversation, whereas Vince Young was the reason that Texas won a national championship. Vince Young was one of the best quarterbacks I have ever seen play in the college game in my life. I'm 28 years old. I'm almost 29 years old. And granted, it was only for 1 year. CJ was dotting teams up for 2 years in a row. And I think that 2-year gap definitely makes it interesting.
There's also, I think, a clutch element to Vince Young that's really enticing. Like we rewatched the 2005 game recently. The drive he led there at the end was sick. You talk about his play against USC in the title game. You know, there's some memorable moments where it's like, give me a quarterback that I know for sure is going to make the play at the end of the game. Like I like that idea. Also, just like objectively badass moments in college football, losing or finishing runner-up in the Heisman to Reggie Bush and then beating USC like a month later, pretty sick.
He also has a win over Michigan in the Rose Bowl, for whatever that's worth, as a guy who didn't play at Ohio State. I think I agree. That's my reasoning, Andrew, for why I think I would pick CJ. And you're right, Stefan. Different era. That era of college football, there were a lot of athletes playing quarterback and not quarterbacks, which is why you often saw the quarterbacks from like the elite teams weren't the quarterbacks who were going in the first round sometimes at some of these places. I think Vince Young is the best possible example of what Terrell Pryor or Justin Fields could have been as college quarterbacks. If that's a fair way to put it. Like, they're super athletes. They have strong arms, but you kind of just have to let them be them. And that's what Mac did for two years there. I mean, you're right, Andrew. 2004, he had 12 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He wasn't immaculate. He just had an awesome Rose Bowl, and it set the stage for what he was going to do the next year.
He was the stereotype of running quarterbacks. Oh, they can't throw. Like that. Yeah.
Do you understand that in 2 games against Michigan State in his career, C.J. Stroud matched Vince Young's touchdown total from 2004? That's insane.
Different era, but it is insane.
Different, but if you can throw it, you can throw it. I think if Vince Young played in Ryan Day's offense, it'd be Justin Fields. If C.J. Stroud played in Mac Jones's offense, he'd still be C.J. Stroud. Yeah, Mac Brown. Yeah, Mac Jones is like, well, he did have an offense. He was just running Steve Sarkisian's
offense.
I mean, if he ran that offense too, he'd be playing pretty well there. Okay, so quarterback goes to the edge for Texas. Running back, Archie Griffin and Eddie George versus Earl Campbell and Ricky Williams. Stefan, which way are you leaning?
Man, I think this is probably the toughest one.
This is it's like a push, but we have to answer it for the sake of answer.
Yeah. There's been the Ohio State beat has had some interesting conversations about Archie Griffin the last couple weeks, because we're all in agreement that he's the most accomplished running back in college football history. But like, I think the conversation was like, give me Zeke. Like, I'll take Zeke.
Is he the 4th best running back of these 4 in terms of talent?
Like pure talent? Yeah, probably. Yes. And then Eddie George, again, there's a conversation of like massive season versus like overwhelming career. You know, like that's how some of these conversations go. I'll lean Ohio State because I still think having the only the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner in college football history has to mean something, even if it was a different era.
Andrew?
And I sound like such a hater. I was kind of leaning Texas because when Ricky Williams left the sport, he was the all-time leading rusher in the history of college football. That also has to matter, right? Like, if we're talking about running backs, who was the best at it when Ricky Williams played football? 1998 Heisman Trophy winner. You got both Heisman Trophy winners from Texas. It's 3 Heisman trophies to 2, but it's 2 guys. I leaned Texas. There's a position group which I know Stephen is going to call on me first, which I think makes Ohio State's running game better.
Yeah, but we're not. Yeah, it's
I know.
just about the backs, though.
I lean Texas because of that. Because, like, when you have the leading rusher in the history of the sport, as your like number 1 guy when he leaves the sport, and then your backup is Earl Campbell, I thought that was more impressive than Eddie George and Archie Griffin. I hate that. I hate that I had to say that out loud in public, but that's what I thought.
I don't think that's wrong. You're not wrong for saying that.
But it's you're at the point where it's just like
choosing between Heisman.
I'm choosing between Ricky Williams and Earl Campbell versus Archie Griffin and Eddie George.
Like,
you got to choose.
You're choosing between 2 Heisman Trophy backfields. This is not a wrong answer here.
Yeah.
So here's why it's Ohio State for me. Because if we're talking sheer talent, the 4th guy on the list has 2 Heisman trophies.
That's fair.
Andrew, you said it. It's 2 guys, but it's 3 versus 2.
Mm-hmm.
I also think you're right, Stefan. We've had a lot of conversations about the running back situation here off the record, just with other guys on the beat over the last couple of weeks here. We've swung too far one way with that. Archie did this while also playing in an era where all they did was run the ball. I remember the Northwestern game in 2022. Ohio State couldn't throw the ball because the wind was hurricane level. It wasn't, but it was pretty bad. They couldn't throw the ball out there. And Ohio State couldn't figure out what to do with its offense because they had to run the ball, and everybody knew they had to run the ball, so they couldn't run the ball. Okay, imagine playing in an era where everybody knows all you're going to do is run the ball. And Archie's rushing totals were 14, 28, and 6 touchdowns on 225 carries. All of these led the conference, by the way. In fact, the second one I'm about to name, led the entire country. 120 and 12 touchdowns on 236 carries, and then 13, 57 and 4 touchdowns on 245. I get it. Ricky Williams was amazing at Texas. Ricky wasn't playing in a phone booth when he had those yards. And Ricky only averaged 0.1 more yards per carry than Archie Griffin did, while also getting the ball almost 200 more times than Archie Griffin got the ball. If you told me to draft these 4, the 2 Texas guys are in the middle for me. Because Eddie George is just Derrick Henry before Derrick Henry. And then the 4th guy has 2 Heisman trophies. So I went Ohio State. I did choose Texas, though, Andrew, when I initially looked at the list. And then I started thinking about it. Are we starting to, like, underrate Archie Griffin because we're talking so much about new? Because you're right. Says you got to put it in this era. Okay, Archie did that while they were playing in shoes that were essentially Chuck Taylors with cleats on the bottom of them. So
Are
given
we
today's science...
Are we starting to underrate Archie Griffin?
Yes, because we've
seen him
like twice a week.
Here we are.
We're like, man, this is a little dude. Yeah, because he's not played football in 45 years. That's why he's a little dude. He wasn't a little dude when he was playing football, and he had the afro and the mutton chops.
I think it is interesting to look like we haven't had a running back win the Heisman since Derrick Henry in 2015. Like, Archie Griffin won back-to-back Heisman. So starting 1973, John Cappelletti of Penn State, running back Heisman. Then Archie goes back-to-back, and then it's Tony Dorsett, Earl Campbell, Billy Sims, Charles White, George Rogers, Marcus Allen, Herschel Walker, Mike Rozier. You have to get to 1984 when Doug Flutie at quarterback wins the Heisman. Like, it was literally running back, and now it's like remember Derrick Henry and he won Heisman?
Not only running back. Those are like some of the greatest running backs in the history of football. It's not just like you were saying, like, oh yeah, do you remember when like this random guy who had a great year at Northwestern?
Ashton Genty. It would have been like Ashton Genty winning the Heisman.
It was literally, it's Ashton Genty winning the Heisman.
Yeah, it's like, you remember when this guy had an awesome 1979 year for the Wildcats at Northwestern and he rushed for blah, blah, blah. And then he had like a 2-year cup of coffee in the NFL and then he was done. No. This is like Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't think running backs are winning the Heisman anymore. I think Ashton Genty is the closest we're going to see it, and he
would have won it had Travis Hunter not been a thing.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
But Travis
That's
Hunter
not
was
winning
also
it anymore.
very rare. Like, it's also fair to say we're not going to see Travis
I
Hunter.
don't think we're going to see running backs get the ball that many times anymore. Boise State is better than they were last year, in my opinion, even if they lost Ashton Genty.
We were just talking about Jeremiah Love. It's like that guy could be a Heisman finalist. He's not going to get the ball.
Because it's not worth it. You can't win with running back like that anymore, which I guess is a good thing for all these running backs who have like records. They're never getting broken because no one's going to carry that ball long enough. And I know quarterbacks stick around for 25 years in college football. Running backs don't really do that. They're trying to get to their second contract as quickly as possible. Wide receiver for Ohio State. Anybody want to be crazy and not say that?
I would take Ohio State maybe over any school.
I think you could make a case that Ohio State's second group of wide receivers might be better than a lot of programs first. And I'm not just talking about Texas. I'm talking about like, if you were to like map that out with like Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Miami, like Ohio State's second group there is really, really good.
Those are the programs you chose to name for wide receiver when USC and LSU were sitting right there.
USC and LSU were right there. Yeah, I was thinking along the line.
They probably can't beat USC and LSU with their second group, but they could probably beat like Notre Dame.
I was thinking like Blue Bloods. I was like,
if you're taking LSU's first group against Ohio State's second group,
I think you might be able to take Ohio State's second group.
Who's the second group? Olave, Garrett Wilson, and
no.
Michael Jenkins.
If we're just talking about what they were as college football players, David Boston, Ted Ginn,
Mecca's got to be somewhere in this conversation.
Yeah, like a Mecca. I think then you throw like a Mecca and Garrett and Jackson, Michael Jenkins. This is where I think you could get to like 3 deep and at bare minimum at least have a conversation about whose group is better. Ohio State's second group versus LSU's first guys. Ohio State's third group versus LSU's first guys. You know what I'm saying? I think you can at least
have a conversation.
Yeah. Roy Williams, Jordan Shipley, Linus Sweet, great college football players. Not a conversation.
I don't think any of those 3 guys would start at Ohio State.
It is. I hope there was at least one Texas fan who looked at these all-time teams and said, Jeremiah Smith, the guy who had 3 receiving yards against us.
Yeah. No, but the thing is, to the point of us keeping JJ on this list, I love basketball. Shaq when the NBA originally put out their top 50 best players during their 50th anniversary in 2000, I think that was 1990s. I believe Shaq was the only active player in the top 50 that year. That's JJ. Where Shaq was like 4 years into his NBA career. He was still on his rookie contract at that point, and he's on that list with like Michael Jordan and David Robinson, and like they left Dominique Wilkins off of that top 50 and put Shaq on there. And the reason why is, I don't know, have you been watching this dude for the last 4 years? Nobody knows what to do with him. That's JJ. Did you watch what he did for 16 games? Even the Texas thing of the guy who only had 3 catches? The 18-year-old that Texas's defense spent a week and a half game planning for. Not the 22-year-old first-round draft pick or the 20-year-old first-round draft pick. No, not the 2 running backs who both are going to have 1,000 yards this year. The 19-year-old who this time last year was an early enrollee freshman. Tight end. I'm taking Texas.
Yeah, give me David Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas was sick.
I think this was the biggest no-brainer for Texas, and that's with all due respect to Ricky Dudley. But if Keenan Bailey has his way, over the next 5 to 6 years, Ricky Dudley may or may not be the best tight end at Ohio State. So, who's your O-line, Andrew? Who wins?
I think Ohio State paves a path that you could drive a minivan through, with all due respect to the defensive line that we're going to talk about here. Orlando Pace. I mean, we read that story when we did our Greatest Buckeye, and they talked about him like he was a Greek god. Big Ten Most Valuable Player of the Year, 2-time first-team All-Big Ten, Outland Trophy Award, one of the greatest offensive tackles in the history of the sport. Oh, okay, cool. Who's at left guard? Jim Lachey. Oh, yeah, he was first-team All-Big Ten player, won 2 Big Ten championships, was awesome at Ohio State. Who's your center? LaCharles Bentley, won the Remington Award in 2001. Okay, first-team All-Big Ten. He was a second-team All-Big Ten the year before that. Oh, well, I bet you go down at right guard. No, wait. It was a right guard who finished second in the Heisman conversation in John Hicks. Won the Outland Trophy, won the Lombardi Trophy. Yes. Corey Stringer, right tackle. Less heralded, but still
he would be more
All-American, a consensus All-American, and a 2-time first-team All-Big Ten. And it's crazy to say less heralded because he didn't have Heisman votes.
No, he would be more. You know what? He's the Emeka Egbuka right tackles. He would be more celebrated if he didn't play with Orlando Pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously you look at Ohio State's offensive line, and again, Texas has a great offensive line, but come on, man.
One team has Orlando Pace and the other one.
I don't even think it. No, it's not that. You had 2 Heisman finalists on your offensive line.
Excuse me. Let me correct myself here. One team has Orlando Pace and the other one doesn't, so I don't even want to have a conversation about it. If you take Orlando off, I could at least start making a case. I would be wrong for making the case. Orlando Pace is probably the best offensive tackle in the history of college football. Is Ohio State going to have, by the time it's all said and done, the best offensive tackle in the history of college football, the most decorated running back in the history of college football, and the best wide receiver in the history of college football?
Could be.
This team just refuses to have down years. Stefan, do you have anything?
Gotta beat Michigan. Michigan.
I mean, you gotta beat Michigan, though. I'm assuming you agree it's Ohio State.
Yeah. You know what I thought was interesting is on cleveland.com, you did a great job of making a chart kind of with these rosters that's super easy to follow, and I've read it a million times. When you read them out loud and you said Orlando Pace, Jim Lachey, and LaCharles Bentley, I was like, that's the left side of my line? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Also, very quick Google search, maybe I'm wrong. Ohio State, only offensive line that has a current member of the media. That's got to count for something.
You know who we didn't include? Jim Parker, 8th in Heisman voting in 1956. Woody Hayes called him, quote, the best lineman he's ever coached. Physically, Jim was in a class by himself. He wasn't on the team. So
shout out to Jim Lachey.
Yeah.
Shout out Jim Lachey.
So, Ohio State wins this one.
Okay, just to pick up the pace a little bit, does anybody not have Ohio State for the defensive line as a totality? Okay.
I want to say this is Orlando Pace.
Again, it's Brackens had 24 career sacks for Texas. Brian Arakpo was awesome. Casey Hampton was a great nose tackle. Yeah. But then you compare it to Ohio State, it's just, we're going to have a conversation later. It doesn't match up.
There are 3 guys on this defensive line who were top 5 draft picks. In fact, I think they were all top 3.
What if I told you Chase Young was not the highest defensive lineman drafted on this group for Ohio State?
Yeah, and it's not Joey Bosa either. Linebacker, anybody not have Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Okay. Corner.
This was the tight one for me. Because
Quentin Jammer is awesome.
Well, because I think Quentin Jammer and Jeff Okudah were I think it's one of those things where people will say, oh, well, you're just thinking about their NFL career. Quentin Jammer was the 5th overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Jammer was in that same category that I think it's important for Ohio State fans to contextualize this, because it's the way that you think of Jeff Okudah, Ohio State Buckeye, is the way that Texas fans think of Quentin Jammer, Texas Longhorn, right?
Yep.
So this one was hard. This one was very, very...
Because it's not about what they did once they left. It's about what they did as college football players, which is why Quentin Jammer and Jeff Okudah are both on this list.
Yeah. Can I say I cheated here? I decided I couldn't decide who to pick at corner, so I said Texas secondary. I think Texas has the better secondary as a whole between corner and safety.
You would give them the safeties? I split them up.
I would probably give them safeties and maybe lean their way corners, or at least lean their way on both.
I definitely gave Texas the safeties, and I think I still would have given them the safeties if you replace Mike Doss with Caleb Downs. But I think I gave the corners because while Quentin Jammer was a top 5 draft pick, so were Sean Springs and Jeff Okudah. And Antoine Winfield was pretty good as well. That's fine, though. I think we all agree, though, with the safeties, it's definitely Texas. So what we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Ohio State, 3 for Texas for Stefan and I. And then Andrew is 5 Ohio State, 4 Texas, because he also gave them the running back. So it's not as crazy as maybe I think when we were discussing how this might go. I just think as a totality, what happens. That's why we wanted to break it up, because if we talk about it in the totality, it's not even close. Right now, the voting is 89.84% Ohio State to 10.16% Texas. I would love for this to start reaching the Texas sphere. So if you got friends who root for Texas, send them along this poll, man. Send it along. It's at cleveland.com/OSU. Just type in who would win a game between the all-time Ohio State and all-time Texas, and you'll find it. We picked Ohio State, and we're going to dive into why we picked Ohio State after we take this final break here on Buckeye Talk.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue. Subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis talking all-time Ohio State versus all-time Texas. I think we all picked Ohio State in some degree. We talked about this. We wrote about it too at cleveland.com/OSU. And I think all of our answers are essentially just the overwhelming talent all over the place. It's too much for any team to deal with, which is essentially what Ohio State is every single year. For 10 games a year, it's, oh, we're picking Ohio State to win because they have way more talent than everybody else, which is why this team has been recession-proof. Literally, Cam T. Robinson over at The Athletic wrote a story about the idea of it's recession-proof for 50 years. Over the last 25 years, they've had one bad season, and it was while they were dealing with sanctions with an interim head coach in 2011. So outside of the NCAA, back when the NCAA actually had a backbone doing its job, Ohio State has consistently been one of the best teams in college football. And that frames how you get here, where you have over 50 years worth of college football players, and it just feels like, man to man, they're better at almost every position. Because even the Vince Young, Troy Smith thing, I think that's more of a talent thing than an accolades thing, because they both have essentially the same accolades when you break it down, and if you try to want to tally up votes there. So I guess the question now is, Stefan, as we enter a new era of college football, where you've got revenue sharing, you've got NIL, you've got expanded playoff, which is at 12 right now, and might be at 16 by the end of the decade. What does it look like if we did this 50 years from now for this to not still be true? Like, what would have to happen for Ohio State to not be recession proof? And how much of that is because of what's changing around them versus maybe how they handle what's changing around?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to field rosters strong enough to like drastically change how we feel about this, because as much as Ryan Day says this isn't the case, it is going to be difficult to stack, you know, some of the 5 stars we've seen Ohio State stack in certain recruiting classes. Now, we'll see what happens with rules and everything that's coming with the revenue sharing era. There's a million things that we still don't know how strict things are going to be. But like, talent accumulation and talent retention is a difficult thing to do. And Ohio State has mastered that about as well as anyone. I think the 2024 team is the example of that, of what they were able to keep in terms of retention. And even, you know, to have guys like CJ Hicks and Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, you know, stay on the roster through that and not leave is a very impressive thing to do. And I think that's what separates maybe Ohio State from the rest right now. But to consistently do that over the next 50 years is going to be difficult. But Ohio State has proven that they can do it better than anyone in terms of the consistency. I don't know how. I'm very interested to see how much these top 50 rosters change. But I don't think that necessarily means Ohio State can't continue to win and be good. And like, it's just so rare what they've done. Cameron T. Robinson in that piece for The Athletic had mentioned that, you know, since Woody Hayes arrived, so since 1951, Ohio State has had 4 losing seasons. Texas, who's considered, you know, the bluest of bloods in college football, has had 10 losing seasons since 1986. So like, I'm starting 30 years later, and I'm still getting more than double the number of losing seasons. Now, while Texas struggled, you had teams like Bama, you know, be consistently good, right? After Nick Saban came in, they've kind of been the standard of college football. You've had, you know, but like even Bama before Nick Saban showed up had their struggles. Georgia before their recent run had some struggles. Like, to be as consistent as Ohio State has been is really impressive. And they might be kind of the only team, I'm hesitant to say that, but they might be the only team that's kind of built itself in a way that they can withstand this like leveling of the playing field in college football. But it is going to be tough to stack talent the way that they have the last 50 years.
Andrew, what's more likely in these two hyperboles? Ohio State and Ryan Day are about to go on a Nick Saban. Or, I'll actually put some numbers on it. Over the next 10 years, so it's 2025, 2035, Ohio State wins 4 national titles and gets to 7 Final Fours. Or Ohio State has 4 seasons where they lose 3 or more games.
It's definitely the first one. I think it's definitely the first one. I mean, historically, like, Ohio State went, 32 years or whatever it was from title to title. And then it's been like every 10-ish years since.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was 02 and then it was 14 and then it was 24. It's such a boring answer, but the true answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But because the answer is somewhere in the middle, that they win, one title or something like that, I think you kind of have to go the first one, that they just go on this crazy run. And, one of the things that I thought was really impressive as we were looking at this was like Texas fans view Darrell Royal like in a similar way to like Ohio State fans viewing Woody Hayes. Like Woody Hayes won 5 national championships. Darrell Royal won 3. Woody Hayes had 13 conference championships. Darrell Royal had 11. Like they're pretty similar. But then you go to Fred Akers, who has some really, really good teams, and then he dips. And then you go to David McWilliams, and then John Makovic, and Mac Brown's awesome. But then they hire Charlie Strong and Tom Herman. Ohio State does not have a Charlie Strong or a Tom Herman. People in this fan base look at John Cooper as just the era was like a failure because you couldn't beat Michigan. But 4-6-1, 8-4, 7-4-1, 8-4, 8-3-1, 10-1-1, 9-4, 11-2, 11-1, 10-3, 11-1, 6-6, 8-4. There was a run there where he was winning a lot of games, and I'm not saying it's not valid to be upset that you're losing the most important game on your schedule, especially at that era of college football.
Mm-hmm.
But he was at least beating everybody else, right? Like Earl Bruce had 6 straight 9-3 seasons, and then he backed that up with a 10-3 season.
Mm-hmm.
The misses, quote unquote, have really not happened. Was Woody Hayes a miss as a hire? No, very clearly not. Was Earl Bruce a miss as a hire? Probably not. It's impossible to replace Woody Hayes. John Cooper, I think some people would say that because you didn't beat Michigan and you had some great teams that just didn't get it done. Even then, you could kind of say Cooper was still really good and he won a lot of games. He just couldn't beat that team with the winged helmet.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sounds familiar. But Jim Tressel comes in and was awesome. Urban Meyer was a hit. Ryan Day has been a hit. They won a national championship last year. Ohio State does not miss. Their on-base percentage is very high. It is very, very high in terms of hiring coaches. When Texas hires a coach, it is very much in the style of my favorite type of baseball players, Adam Dunn, Mark Reynolds. Swing hard and hope you hit it. When you hit, you get Darrell Royal, you get Fred Akers, you get Mac Brown. It seems like you get Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian's been awesome the last 2 years, and he has the number 1 team going into 25. When you miss, you swivel yourself into the dirt, you end up with 6-7, 5-7, and 5-7 for Charlie Strong, and you got to fire him. Or you end up with, John Makovic, 6-5, 5-5-1, 8-4, 10-2-1, 8-5, 4-7, and then you got to go bring in Mac Brown. Texas has missed. Ohio State does not miss. And that is why we arrived at this place on this list, because it's not I think you could make a case that the peaks of both programs are probably higher. It's just that there's less to choose from for Texas. And when you have that level of player just consistently for Ohio State, it makes it a heck of a lot easier for Ohio State to kind of run away with something like this.
It's crazy that Texas struggled that much in that Big 12. If they were going consistently 9-3, 8-4, we're tossing 5 and Texas going 5-7 in that Big 12. I understand struggling against Oklahoma. Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley was, they were good and they were doing well in the Big 12. So losing to them is one thing, but go 5-7 in that Big 12 as Texas is kind of crazy. I think that it's also I tried to make this point when we were talking about this off air of just Ohio State's dominance at wide receiver is obviously very impressive, and what Brian Hartline has done is one of one. But it also doesn't shock me that Ohio State has this big of a gap at receiver, because in the era where passing has become more prevalent and receiver play has become so prevalent, Texas has not been good in that era up until recently. So it doesn't surprise me that Ohio State is that much better at receiver.
I think, Andrew, the way especially you put it more on coaching hires, right? Ohio State hasn't necessarily missed in that regard, and even the misses, because they're batting.
The misses win 70% of their games,
right? Which is why the standard can become so outlandish the way it the concept of the standard is when the standard is beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national title. And so far, so many achieve it. When you don't do it, it stands out a little bit more. If you're wearing all white, one little speck of dirt can stand out a little bit more than if you're wearing some colors, right? And I mean, they've had 3 straight home run hires. How many programs in college football have 3 straight home run hires? And so that's where you get to maybe Ohio State is just too big to fail. But also, this is the most change we've seen in this sport in over 100 years, right? And so that's why I think I agree with you. Whatever Ryan Day has done here, I think it's a fair assumption that whoever takes the job next is going to be pretty good at this. I mean, Day is the most outlandish hire they could have possibly had. He had never been a head coach before. And up until 2 years prior, he had no association with Ohio State. This is a guy from Northeast America, who had spent the last few years of his life in the NFL playing for, at best, decent to average NFL teams. That's who he was coaching at that point, right? It's not like he came in here at Ohio State where his job was to fix JT Barrett and he had just spent the last decade coaching Tom Brady. And Gene Smith saw something in that and he's right. Now, the Michigan thing's been weird, but everything else, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Ohio State's program. In fact, I do think it's in a better place than where it was when Urban Meyer retired. It's just because he keeps losing them. It's again, he's wearing all white. And so this one little dot on his suit keeps getting pointed out. It's a big dot. You can't lose the Michigan game.
Do you know how many coaches in Ohio State history that have ever coached the Buckeyes have a worse winning percentage than 500? There's 3 of them.
And how many of them are before integration?
I'll do you one better. So first off, Luke Fickell, he went 6-7. And
how many of them coach more than 20?
Yeah, it was Luke Fickell who coached 13 games, went 6-7, and that was obviously kind of a mess of a situation.
He's not even a full-time head coach.
He is an interim. It's a kind of a messy situation. Then, from 1890 to 1891, forget integration. It was before the turn of the century, not the past century, the previous one.
The Industrial Revolution was actively going on.
Yeah, Alexander Lilly could not drive a car to coach the Ohio State Buckeyes because I don't think they had been invented yet. I don't know if cars had been invented yet. Please, someone don't fact check me on that. He went 3-5 from 1890 to 18. At the time of his death, he was managing a shipbuilding company in New York. That was
hell yeah
his history. He was known to ride an Indian pony to practices. I literally couldn't drive a car. Okay. And then the next one, David Edwards, he coached in 1897, and he went 1-7-1. Wow, this guy stunk. David Farragut Edwards. He was also the coach in 1897. I'm looking this up for the first time. He was the coach at Ohio State in 1897, went 1-7-1. And then he went to Texas in 1898 and went 5-1. So, worst coach in Ohio State history went 5-1 at Texas.
I think this should be a trophy game, and I know exactly who to name it after.
The worst coach in Ohio State history has an 83% winning percentage at Texas.
So I think this is an Ohio State thing. If they don't handle all these changes in college football the right way, that's the only way this falls off a cliff. And I guess it's kind of 50-50. It's not going to fall off a cliff. I'm sorry. That's the wrong language.
The thing is, like, the point of this is the cliff for Ohio State is going 8-4, whereas whereas teams like Texas have literally gone 5-7.
Yeah, it's
like I don't know, like I don't know where like what the bet would be, but like the over under of like years until Ohio State has a losing season, like that number is going to be like 30. Like when's Ohio State going to have a losing season again?
Like
barring something insane happening, like sanctions or whatever.
Very genuinely map out 5-7 for Ohio State this year. You lose, so the 7 losses: Texas, Penn State, Michigan, Illinois. Like, but I'm saying this to be like, this is who these teams. This is who you would have to lose to, and these are kind of the level of teams that Texas has lost to.
Right. So when I'm saying fall off a cliff, we're not. That's not that. That's why we call them recession proof. That's not going to happen here. They are not going to. So that's not when we're saying take a level down. We're talking about all of a sudden they're going 9-3 and 8-4. All of a sudden 10-2 isn't the floor anymore, is what I'm saying. We're not saying 5-7. That's not even a realistic conversation. This is a conversation about how Ohio State has been one of those programs who can stack talent. They could say, we have a guy who was a third stringer who was a first round draft pick, and the only reason he's not playing is because he's a true freshman behind a sophomore and a junior who are also first round draft picks. That is not football anymore. in a world where, as we're recording this, 5-star Braylon Womack is expected to go to Auburn. In a world where Felix Ojo isn't going to Texas, he's going to Texas Tech. In a world where Phil Knight has a young coach, and Phil Knight is old and would love to see his alma mater win a championship. So there is no amount of money too high. And that's not it's plenty of school, right? But that's what we're talking. Braylon Womack is ending up at Ohio State, Georgia, or Alabama 10 years ago. Felix Ojo is ending up at Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia 10 years ago. And now that's not true. Most of these players are still going to these programs, but all it takes is 7 or 8 5-stars a year to not do what those 7 or 8 5-stars a year were doing 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden, that's how you get a little bit more parity. Okay, so what's Ohio State's role in that in terms of picking and choosing when they do want to meet a certain price point? And right now, the message they are sending is that they're not overpaying for true freshmen as a program who wants to recruit and develop from within. So I would say that the only way Ohio State's floor drops below 10-2 on a regular basis is if they and their approach to this right now is proven to be the wrong approach over the next 5 years. Both in because we find out there's no penalty for going over the top aggressive, but also, as Ryan Day said, there's going to be a need for your assistant coaches to be much better evaluators than they've ever been. So we have multiple cycles in a row where they do not do a good job evaluating the talent. And they are also missing out on guys who are going to the highest bidder. That is how Ohio State goes from ceiling is 12-0, floor is 10-2, to ceiling will still be 12-0, but the floor might be 8-4. Unless they just stop scheduling marquee non-conference games. And then maybe the floor will still be 10-2 because they just won't play anybody.
That's another element.
Yeah, that's another
I got a quick question before we wrap up.
Okay.
With the all-time teams we did here, do you guys have a jersey of any of these players, whether it be NFL or college football?
I had an Archie Griffin jersey at one point in my life because I was in college and most festivals I went to, people just wore jerseys. And that's it though.
When I was a little kid, when jerseys were affordable for everyone, I used to get them a lot for Christmas, and I had a Ricky Williams Dolphins jersey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I had one of those bright orange. I had a bright orange Nathan Vasher Bears jersey. When I was looking at the roster, I was like Nathan Vasher. I was like, holy crap! I was like, I did have one of those.
The only thing I remember about Nathan Vasher in his football career, like before I did like the research for this, was like that 109-yard field goal return where it was like 80-mile-an-hour winds in Chicago, and he like returned the kickback. Oh, yeah, that was the only thing I remembered.
Nathan Vasher, baby.
The thing I liked about doing this is there was a lot of, oh yeah, I forgot, he was awesome. That happened a lot. While
it made me feel good as a resident Washington fan that Brian Arakpo was on this list.
I don't know if he wasn't not going to be on the list, but sure. 4-3-5-0-3-3-1-5, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. That's it. We're done with hypotheticals and big picture type of things. We got Mark It Down Monday on Monday, where we're predicting Ohio State's record in the college football playoff, and then we're in it. The season is officially here. Ohio State takes on Texas next Saturday at noon in the shoe, number 1 versus number 3. 614-350-3315. For Andrew Gillis and Stefan Krajisnik, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.
Talk about stepping up. It's time to level up your game. Introducing the all-new ESPN app. All of ESPN, all in one place. Your home for the most live sports and the best championship moments.
The electricity is palpable.
Step up your game with no annual contract required. It's the ultimate fan experience. Level up for more on the ESPN app or at stream.espn.com. Sign up now.